Hello, welcome once again to RWR Plays TEW 2020, and this is chapter 15, the episode that brings you the Nitro after Bash at the Beach. We, of course, covered Bash at the Beach in our last chapter, and it was an interesting show. We had the Shane Douglas injury in his match with Booker T, which caused them to have a really low rating. It didn't help also that they don't have particularly good chemistry. We had the Insiders defeat the Steiner brothers when Ric Flair returned and helped the Insiders win the match to set up to the main event of this week's episode of Nitro, which will see the Insiders challenge for the WCW World Tag Team Championships against Totally Buff. And we also saw Jeff Jarrett introduce his new bodyguard, who would be the prototype John Cena. And then Jeff Jarrett defeated Sting in the main event with the help of John Cena for a good show rating of 77. I think that's our best so far. The Insiders versus Steiner Brothers match is the best match we've put on up to date, and Jeff Jarrett and Sting was also, I think, the third best match we've ever had in the company since the relaunch. But yeah, it's a bit of heat backstage on Booker T after it was deemed that he was to blame for Shane Douglas's injury, and some relief really, because I had toyed with the idea of making them the main event given that they were fighting for the title, but in the end that would have been a bit of a disaster because it would have definitely seen our show overall rating kind of dip quite significantly, so we got away with one there. So today, as I say, we have all the fallout from the Bash at the Beach and that main event, which is for the tag team titles, to come on Nitro. So here we go then, we're at the Palms Casino Resort in Nevada in front of 2,297 people. So once again in the southwest region, but we continue to increase our attendances week on week, and our television ratings have also been increasing week on week. I think we've gone from about 1.3 million to 1.5 million as time has worn on through the save so far, so really happy with that. And to start off, we have a couple of dark matches, beginning with this one, which is Sting, Jim Duggan, Sean O'Hare and Chuck Palumbo against Team Canada and Chronic in an 8-man tag match, and Sting's team win in 9:44 when Sting pins Brian Clark. Segment rating here of 61. Sting had a performance of 76, Lance Storm is 68 and Mike Awesome is 69, everyone else a little bit lower, but this was really just to get these guys on the show in front of the crowd because we didn't have anything for them to do physically in this week's episode of Nitro. And another dark match just after that, Bob Eaton defeats Jason Jett in 7 minutes and 9 seconds by pinfall. Bob Eaton a 42, Jason Jett a 34, but a match really between two guys that haven't meant an awful lot so far in this save. Segment rating of 40. So before the Nitro music hits at all, we have a video recap of Bash at the Beach to begin the broadcast of Nitro. This includes victories for Mike Awesome and Rey Mysterio Jr. and Billy Kidman in their title defenses, Bill Goldberg overcoming Chronic in their handicap match, Booker T defeating Shane Douglas, and then the franchise players being fought off by he and Goldberg, plus their tense moment afterwards. Ric Flair returning and costing the Steiner brothers their match with the Insiders and his woo on the stage, and then Jeff Jarrett introducing his new bodyguard, the prototype John Cena, and then Cena helping Jarrett secure the victory over Sting. So segment rating of 65 here, just obviously recapping everything that took place at Bash at the Beach for those that didn't buy it on pay-per-view. And then the opening match of the night is Air Raid versus the FBI. And during this match, the commentators note that later in the show, Eric Bischoff will be live in the ring to announce the new #1 contender to Booker T's WCW heavyweight title of the world. And the FBI get the win in this one when Johnny the Bull holds Air Paris's feet when he's being covered by James Maritato, preventing him from making the kick out. So you see here, this one lasted 8 minutes and 7 seconds. And Frankie Cicero, who is the former Tony Mamaluki, was the weak link, struggling to keep up with everyone else's performance. AJ Styles, an in-ring performance of 40. That's more like what I'm hoping from him. And James Maritato, a 46. A segment rating of 42. A pretty decent way to start the show. Then we go backstage to Tony Schiavone, and his guest at this time is Bill Goldberg. He asks Goldberg about the brief meeting of eyes between himself and Booker T at the Bash at the Beach last night, and whether this is a sign that Goldberg wants the WCW title. Goldberg responds by saying of course he wants the title, it's the biggest prize in the game, and anybody who doesn't aspire to hold it shouldn't be here. He says that he'll be watching on later when Bischoff announces who the new #1 contender is. Schiavone then asks Goldberg why, if he wants the title, did he help Booker T last night. Goldberg says that as much as he wants the WCW World title, he still has unfinished business with that no-good piece of crap Shane Douglas, and no matter what Bischoff says later, Douglas is still on his list. So segment rating here 56. Neither Schiavone or Goldberg performed well during this one, and I think we might be best paid to prevent Goldberg from talking, to be honest, in the future, because I imagine segments like this will bring his popularity down, which is obviously no good to us at all. He's supposed to be one of the biggest stars in the world. The next segment is a women's match between Alexis Lurie and Angel Orsini in the women's title round robin. Going into this one, both women were on 3 points with 1 win and 1 loss apiece. And in this one, Angel Orsini defeats Alexis Lurie in 5:26 by submission. Both had a rating over 20, but unfortunately, the segment rating was still only 12. I need to look into why this is happening, because realistically, with those in-ring performances, they should be a little higher than that. And I wonder whether or not we're just getting penalised because... So here's the thing. Segment rating is penalised for the odd face-heel combination. I wonder if that's a big drag on it, because I presume they're both baby faces or something. Anyway, whatever the case, I would expect them still to just have a little bit better of a segment rating than that. So it does appear that the fans of WCW at the moment are just not taking to the women's division. The other thing that's interesting about this is that I am not picking the winners for these matches. I'm letting the road agents decide who wins, simply because at the moment, for me, this early in the round robin, it doesn't really matter. And I'm hoping what I'll do when we get towards the end is then start to book it in a way that kind of gets me a result that I can work with going forward. But anyway, Angel Orsini gets the victory here. So next, Tony Schiavone and Eric Bischoff are stood in the ring, and Schiavone says that the man next to him will be announcing the new #1 contender to the WCW Heavyweight title of the world in just a moment. But first of all, he brings out the current champion, Booker T. Schiavone asks Booker T how he's doing after last night's victory. Booker responds by saying he's feeling good, but boy, it feels like everybody wants this belt at the moment. Booker T responds by saying that he's made no bones about it, that Scott Steiner is top of his list, and he's hoping that the WCW Championship Committee has taken his wishes into account. Schiavone then turns to Eric Bischoff and asks him to reveal the new #1 contender to the title. Bischoff then announces that the man who will face Booker T at Slamboree is Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett then walks out along with his bodyguard John Cena. Jarrett takes the microphone and tells Booker T that he is on a roll, having beaten Sting last night, and then 4 weeks' time he's going to take a title that he held with such distinction in the past. Booker T and Jeff Jarrett then eyeball one another, and we cut to break. So a segment rating of 72 here. Booker T came across well, Tony Schiavone worked well, Booker T did really well, and Jeff Jarrett improvised well as well. So a really good, decent start to the build for Booker T and Jeff Jarrett's match at Slamboree, which is our next pay-per-view. And I've moved Slamboree, you'll notice. So Slamboree was traditionally the May pay-per-view for WCW. Now, obviously, I wasn't going to do that this year because we had the Big Bang in May. And then I thought next year I'd actually like to use Mayhem in May, because I just think that makes more sense from a naming convention. So I thought, well, I don't really want to get rid of Slamboree because it's got a little bit of history. So I've moved it to August instead, because I wasn't really... into the previous names that WCW gave their August pay-per-view. So Slamboree will be the August pay-per-view from now on. Next up, Vampiro faces Lenny Lane in a match that only goes for 6 minutes and 16 seconds and is won by Vampiro by pinfall. Segment rating here of 56. Vampiro had an in-ring performance of 56, and he was very much the focus of the match, and Lenny Lane had an in-ring performance of 31. So next up, we have a backstage interview. Tony Schiavone says that he's eager to get some reaction to the announcement just minutes ago that Jeff Jarrett has been named the new #1 contender to the WCW Heavyweight title of the world, and so he has with him now Scott Steiner. Steiner says that he doesn't care what Booker T says. It's obvious to him that the WCW Championship Committee are acting as a human shield for the so-called champion. Steiner says that it's been 4 months since he lost the WCW title, and still he's had no chance to get it back, which is a disgrace. Before he can continue, however, Eric Bischoff interrupts. He tells Steiner that it was made very clear from the relaunch of WCW that nobody gets a title shot just because they used to be champion or are a big star. Bischoff says that in the new WCW you have to earn every opportunity, and since the relaunch, Steiner has been offered a number of singles match opportunities, but he declined them all, claiming they were below him. He says that the only way Scott Steiner can make his way back up the rankings is if he amasses victories in the singles ranks. He says that therefore the reason Steiner has not been given a title shot is that not only is he not top of the list, but because he's not wrestled once in singles competition since the relaunch. He's not second on the list, he's not 10th on the list, and right now he's not even anywhere on the list. Bischoff does say, however, that if Steiner wants to start building his way towards a title shot, he has an opportunity to do that tonight. He said someone has just before we came on air informed us that they are unable to be here tonight and they were originally booked for a match with Conan. So the space is now opened up and he offers it to Steiner. Steiner asks if what Bischoff is saying is that if he wins versus Conan, he'll get a title shot. And Bischoff says, no, you've misunderstood me, but it'll be the first step on the road to getting one. Take it or leave it. Steiner says he'll take it, but tells Bischoff that when he beats half the roster, he better be true to his word or there will be hell to pay. So segment rating here of 68. Scott Steiner was fantastic, and Eric Bischoff was pretty good too. Decent segment here. Next, we get a tag team match as the American Mavericks take on Ernest Miller and Ice Train. The American Mavericks is the new team name for James Storm and Chris Harris, and they also come out for this match with new ring gear and new gimmicks. We've termed it as modern redneck. That's kind of just how I see James Storm in his kind of later cowboy gimmick, and so kind of that's kind of shaping them is just in that kind of mold. They get the victory here in 7:09 when Chris Harris pins Ice Train. A segment rating of 37, and this is the beginning of something with James Storm and Chris Harris, basically a renewed push for them. They've not had any kind of a push so far. They've been basically jobbers, so we've repackaged them, given them new gimmicks, given them a new name, and they've got their first victory. Ernest Miller was the best wrestler in the match, and Chris Harris and James Storm's new gimmicks have been adequate and very good, so that's a really good start for them. They've got the chemistry as well, so yeah, happy with all of that. The American Mavericks kind of make their debut, although at least under their new team name. Next up, we get Jamie Noble backstage with Tony Schiavone, and this time Schiavone asks Noble how he feels about the Cruiserweight title opportunity he has in 2 weeks' time. Noble says it will be a great honour for him to face Great Sasuke, and having come through two men to earn that shot, he feels he has what it takes to become the new champion. So a really quick interview here, segment rating of 32, nothing specific to talk about really. Next up, Scott Steiner faces Conan and wins the match in 11:53 by submission. Steiner was off his game and only put in an in-ring performance of 73. Conan a 59, but the segment was decent enough for 60. I'm happy with that, and Scott Steiner gets his first singles victory since the relaunch of WCW. Then we have a backstage segment where Tony Schiavone conducts an interview with Team Canada. Schiavone asks Mike Awesome who's up next for him after Mike Awesome's successful defense of the US title last night at the Bash of the Beach. Mike Awesome says he's not worried about who's next. In the last 3 months, he's beaten everybody who's been put before him. He says whoever WCW line up for him, he'll take down. Lance Storm says that it's no surprise that Awesome is so relaxed about the situation given the losers like Kurt Hennig that they have been given to go up against him. He says that maybe if they want Awesome to face a difficult challenge, they should look a little bit closer to home. Storm glares slightly at Awesome, and Awesome rolls his eyes and the pair walk off. So segment rating here of 51. Everybody performed pretty well. The idea here is I want to kind of ever since we started really, Mike Awesome and Lance Storm have had a little bit of a question over whether they kind of like each other or whether they're kind of still in league. Obviously, Mike Awesome beat Lance Storm in the tournament originally, and then kind of there was a bit of a question over whether Lance Storm was okay with Mike Awesome after having lost the match, but then helped Mike Awesome win the US title. So now we're just sort of reintroducing that kind of strange dynamic between the two. After this, we have Mike Tenay and Jerry Lawler at the commentary position, and Mike Tenay reminds everybody that still to come tonight they have the main event as the Insiders take on Totally Buff for the tag team titles. And before that, we also have Terry Funk up against Bam Bam Bigelow. Jerry Lawler then says excitedly that earlier tonight the main event of Slamboree was announced as Booker T will defend the WCW title against Jeff Jarrett. Tenay then tells Lawler to brace himself because if he's excited about that, he might lose himself entirely once he hears what he's just been told. Tenay says that it's just been made official at Slamboree. Shane Douglas will face Bill Goldberg in a rematch from their contest at the Big Bang, where Goldberg will finally look to take his revenge on the franchise. Then Tenay says that he nearly forgot, but 2 massive matches have also been announced for next week's Nitro, because Goldberg might get a chance for some revenge earlier than Slamboree, as next week's main event will see he and Booker T team together to face all 3 of the franchise players in a 2-on-3 handicap match. Lawler then asks if he can tell everyone about the other match that's going to take place next week, and Tenay nods. Lawler then says that next week we will see the debut of Jeff Jarrett's hired bodyguard, the prototype John Cena, and he'll be in a baptism of fire when he faces Sting. Tenay adds that at Bash of the Beach last night, Cena helped cost Sting his match versus Jarrett, and next week he gets the chance for some payback. So a segment rating of 62 here, as Mike Tenay and Jerry Lawler kind of do a load of plugs for future matches still to come. And next up, Terry Funk faces Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow defeats Terry Funk in 11:26 by pinfall, and during the match we also saw Canyon and Tommy Dreamer run in and attack their relative enemies. This was a bit of a overbooked brawl, basically, as this story continues. Segment rating of 50. Terry, neither wrestler hit the 50 mark, so they've obviously done well to get up to a 50. And a continuation of the story between these two pairings. In the penultimate segment of the show, Tony Schiavone stands in the ring and says that he has a very special guest to introduce right now, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. I've just noticed that we've actually put Eric Bischoff as the interviewer, but it's Tony Schiavone. I've obviously made a mistake there. Flair comes to the ring and Schiavone asks him what's been going on. Flair says that after he was given the cold shoulder by his former friends in the Magnificent Seven, he decided to take some time to himself. He says he took himself off to the Caribbean, partied the nights away, and took in the heat of the hot Caribbean sun. He said the women were beautiful, the drinks were cool, and life was good, but he knew that he had to return to WCW and make sure that nobody thought he was going soft. And so Scott Steiner found out last night what the consequences are when you turn on the Nature Boy. Schiavone asks him what he's going to do next, and Flair says that he knows he's not getting any younger. He says that he knows that time is running out for him, but when he was sat under that beautiful deep blue sky surrounded by the most beautiful women you've ever seen, it came to him, an epiphany, and that epiphany was one more run. Flair says he's got it in him. He wants one more chance, one more shot to reach the top of the greatest wrestling company in the world. Flair is then interrupted by Scott Steiner, who comes out to the stage with a microphone but is cut off from the ring by a wall of security. After this then, Steiner tells Flair that he talks about one more run, but he'll be lucky if he can even walk after he's done with him. Steiner says that last night Flair cost him an opportunity to become a WCW Tag Team Champion again, but more than that, you cost my brother the chance too. At that point, Rick Steiner enters in from the crowd and attacks Flair from behind. Rick puts the boots to Flair as Scott laughs, still being prevented from coming to the ring by the security. So another really good segment here, 70. Scott Steiner came out of this looking excellent. So it's time for the main event, and it's for the tag team titles. Totally Buff versus the Insiders. And what happened here is as the match wore on, it broke down and all 4 men were in the ring. DDP then hit a diamond cutter and went for the pin on Bagwell, but the referee incorrectly insisted that DDP wasn't the legal man and refused to make the cover for the pin. Kevin Nash then got in the referee Billy Silverman's face and pushed him so hard that he fell through the ropes to the floor below and was hurt. DDP then asked what Nash did that for before tagging Nash. While this was going on, Buff had also recovered and tagged out to Luger, who low-blowed DDP from behind. Bagwell, meanwhile, went round the ring and engaged Nash in a brawl. Then Charles Robinson ran to the ring and took over referee duties, and Luger, having already low-blowed DDP, then hit him with a power slam and got the pin to allow Totally Buff to retain the tag team titles. So this is interesting. 60 minutes and 58 seconds was the length of the match, and Lex Luger actually pinned him. It says here with a Buff Blockbuster, but I don't think Luger would do the Buff Blockbuster, so I'm not having that either. Segment rating of 60. Totally Buff make defense number 2 of the WCW World Tag Team titles, and Lex Luger was the weak link, and you can see there performance of 53. DDP was off his game, but to be honest, a segment rating of 60 is a little disappointing. I feel like that should have perhaps been a little higher. But anyway, that is the main event, and Totally Buff have retained the tag team titles. And that is the end of the show. And an overall rating of 64, which means that we do increase our popularity in pretty much everywhere. The main event wasn't the best match we've ever seen in WCW, but it was good enough to get us the rating level that we needed. And yeah, various kind of lots of talking segments on this one, quite detailed talking segments, and I don't know how they've come across during the course of this episode. It's always difficult when there's a lot of stuff to explain, a lot of exposition, and I'm trying to do it in a way that's a bit more interesting and quite varied, but sometimes it's not always the easiest. Basically, the real headlines coming out of the show is that we've got Booker T to face Jeff Jarrett at Slamboree for the WCW title. Next week, Booker T and Goldberg will team together to take on the franchise players in a 2-on-3 handicap match, and also Goldberg will face Douglas as well at Slamboree in a rematch from the Big Bang. So that's the show. That's everything that's due to take place. So another show down. We've got, I think, 3 weeks from here to the next pay-per-view. Oh no, it's a bit longer actually. Apologies. So there's 5 weeks of build to Slamboree. So we've got 4 more weeks still to go. And another good show. We've got feedback still is that it's awesome. I think that's pretty much going to be the case every time we have a show that's better than the vast majority of our popularity elsewhere. What happened on Raw this week? Not as good as usual. Hogan and Austin defeated The Truth. I don't know who The Truth are. Oh, Eddie Guerrero and Warrior. So Eddie Guerrero and the Ultimate Warrior's team name is The Truth. Fascinating. Yeah, so a bit lower than usual, but still very much higher than ours, obviously. So next week we'll be bringing you the next episode of Nitro, which will include, as I say, Booker T and Bill Goldberg's match with Shane Douglas and Chronic. We've also got Sting versus John Cena, and John Cena's in-ring debut in WCW. And obviously John Cena is completely unknown really to people. He's just this guy with an impressive physique who's been introduced as Jeff Jarrett's bodyguard. And I wanted to give him a start similar to that which he had in WWE. Obviously his first match in WWE was against Kurt Angle. And this way against Sting, it's kind of like we're bringing him in, putting straight him into the deep end and giving him that kind of quite big push right off the get-go. I don't think, for example, he's going to be a main eventer anytime soon, but I just felt like we may as well go all in on him and see how it works. So that's what we're doing really. So Sting will face John Cena next week. That's everything for this episode. Apologies if I've been a bit rambly during this one. I felt like I've been talking more than I normally would and haven't always been as clear as usual. But hopefully it hasn't affected your enjoyment too much. If you have enjoyed the show, please give us a like and, of course, subscribe as we try to continue to build a following here. And until the next time, thank you very much for watching.